You were not supposed to be home until 5. That was the first thing Madison Blake said when she opened the front door of Emily Whitmore's house wearing another woman's comfort like it belonged to her. The doorbell was still glowing blue beneath Emily's trembling finger. Rain tapped against the stone steps behind her. Inside the mansion, somewhere beyond the marble foyer and the cold white staircase, Grant Whitmore stood frozen in a half-buttoned dress shirt, his face drained of every rich man's excuse. Emily was 7 months pregnant. One hand held the folded ultrasound picture she had been carrying since morning. The other rested over the small, steady movement beneath her ribs, as if her daughter had heard the sentence too. You were not supposed to be home. Not I am sorry. Not this is not what it looks like. Not Emily, let me explain. Just a mistake in timing. A schedule that failed. A lie that opened the door early. Stay with me, because the woman standing in that rain did not know it yet. But the same doorbell camera that watched her heartbreak would later become the witness that destroyed a millionaire's perfect life. The Whitmore estate sat at the end of a private road in Westchester County, New York, behind iron gates and security hedges trimmed so sharply they looked almost hostile. From the outside, it was the kind of home people slowed down to admire. Limestone columns, tall black windows, a circular driveway wide enough for charity guests and television crews. But homes like that can hide silence better than any prison. Emily knew every inch of it. She had chosen the pale nursery wallpaper with tiny gold moons. She had argued for the softer carpet on the second floor because babies learned to crawl before they learned what money meant. She had filled the kitchen with warm light, fresh flowers, and the fantasy that if she made the house gentle enough, Grant might become gentle inside it. For 6 years, she had been Mrs. Grant Whitmore, wife of the real estate millionaire who smiled in magazine profiles and spoke about family values at donor dinners. In public, he touched the small of her back and called her his greatest blessing. In private, he called her emotional, fragile, dramatic. Lately, he had used a softer weapon: pregnancy hormones. Every time Emily noticed lipstick on a wine glass she had not used, hormones. Every time Grant came home smelling like expensive perfume and hotel soap, hormones. Every time Madison Blake's name appeared in his calendar after midnight, hormones. Madison was supposed to be his brand consultant, a polished woman with sharp smiles and a voice like crystal tapping against glass. She helped Grant choose suits, speeches, charity angles, camera lighting. Then she started choosing more. Which events Emily should skip. Which interviews needed only Grant. Which rooms in the house looked too sentimental for his image. Emily had felt herself being edited out of her own marriage one appointment at a time. That morning, she had sat alone in a prenatal exam room while a doctor measured her blood pressure twice, then a third time, with a frown she tried to hide. Go home and rest, Emily, Dr. Harris had said gently. No stress today. Not one unnecessary argument. Emily almost laughed. In her life, stress had a key to the front door. She had texted Grant from the parking lot, telling him she was coming home early. The message stayed unread. So she drove back through the rain, past the gates, past the fountain, past Madison's silver convertible parked too close to the garage to be accidental. Her own key was in the diaper bag on the passenger seat, buried beneath appointment papers and tiny socks she had bought on the way home. So Emily walked to the front door and pressed the bell. Inside, the chime echoed once. Then footsteps. Not Grant's. Heavier than a maid's. Confident. Familiar. The lock turned. The door opened. Madison Blake looked at Emily's belly first, then at her face, then down at the ultrasound picture slowly softening in the rain. And behind Madison, Grant Whitmore did not move. That was when Emily saw it. On Madison's wrist, shining under the foyer chandelier, was the little gold baby bracelet Emily had bought for her unborn daughter. The one Grant said had been misplaced. The one engraved with a single word. Hope. For one full second, no one breathed. The rain behind Emily sounded louder than the people in front of her. Madison's smile flickered, not because she felt shame, but because she realized Emily had seen the bracelet. Hope. 5 tiny letters circling the wrist of a woman who had no right to touch it. Emily remembered buying it at a small boutique near Greenwich Avenue 3 weeks earlier, on a day when Grant had canceled another ultrasound appointment because of what he called an emergency investor lunch. She had stood beneath soft yellow lights, holding that bracelet in her palm, imagining a newborn hand too small to understand promises. The saleswoman had asked if she wanted it gift-wrapped. Emily had said yes, because some part of her still believed Grant might open it with her, might smile, might finally place both hands on her belly and become the father he performed so well in public. Instead, he had said the box went missing. He had even looked irritated when she cried. "Emily," Grant said at last, and her name sounded strange in his mouth, like a password he had forgotten. He stepped forward, then stopped when Madison lifted her chin. That tiny pause told Emily more than a confession ever could. He was not deciding how to protect his wife. He was deciding how to manage the room. The foyer smelled faintly of Madison's perfume and the white roses Emily had arranged that morning before leaving for the doctor. The same roses were still on the console table, but now several petals had fallen onto the black marble floor, scattered like small pale warnings. Emily looked past Madison and saw 2 wine glasses on the side table. One had a lipstick mark on the rim. The other sat beside Grant's phone, face down, the way he always placed it when he was hiding something. Every detail had been waiting for her. Every detail had been brave enough to tell the truth. "That bracelet belongs to my daughter," Emily said. Her voice was quiet, almost too quiet for the size of the room. Madison glanced down at her wrist as if she had forgotten she was wearing it, then gave a soft laugh. "Grant said it was just sitting in a drawer. Just sitting in a drawer." The words moved through Emily slowly. A nursery drawer. A drawer lined with lavender paper. A drawer where Emily had placed tiny socks, folded blankets, and the first photograph of their baby's face. Grant's jaw tightened. "Madison, go upstairs." But Madison did not move. That was the first time Emily saw the arrangement clearly. Madison was not a mistake hiding in the shadows. She was comfortable. She knew which staircase led to the primary suite, where the good glasses were kept, how to stand beneath Emily's chandelier, as if she had already rehearsed owning the house. "No," Emily whispered. Grant blinked. "What did you say?" Emily's fingers closed around the ultrasound picture. The paper had softened from the rain, but the image was still visible. A small profile, a tiny nose, a life waiting for safety. I said no. She does not get to go upstairs in my home wearing my baby's bracelet. For a moment, the old Emily almost apologized. The old Emily, who smoothed over Grant's bad moods before guests arrived. The old Emily, who laughed when he corrected her in public. The old Emily, who stood beside him at galas while Madison adjusted his tie with hands that lingered too long. That woman had spent months shrinking herself to keep peace inside a house where peace was never being offered. But something changed when Madison touched the bracelet. Betrayal was one thing. Stealing hope from a child who had not even been born yet was another. Grant crossed the foyer quickly, lowering his voice into the tone he used when photographers were nearby and servants were within earshot. "Do not do this here." Emily looked at him then, really looked at him. $1 million watch. Bare feet on her marble floor. Shirt open at the collar. A man caught not by guilt, but by inconvenience. "Here," she asked. "This is our house." His eyes hardened. "It is my house, Emily. Let us not become dramatic." There it was. The sentence beneath every silence. The truth he had polished and hidden under marriage vows. Madison's smile returned, small and satisfied, as if she had been waiting for him to say it out loud. Emily felt her daughter move inside her. One firm turn beneath her hand, and suddenly the mansion did not feel large anymore. It felt hollow. It felt like a stage built for a man who had mistaken money for ownership. Outside, thunder rolled low over the trees. Above the door, the small black lens of the security camera blinked once, recording everything. Grant's words did not echo. They settled. My house. 2 small words, polished by wealth and sharpened by years of entitlement, landed harder than any shout could have. Emily stood beneath the porch light with rain darkening the shoulders of her maternity cardigan, and for the first time, she understood that Grant had never seen the mansion as a home they built together. He saw it as a vault. His name on the gate. His rules in the rooms. His wife inside it only as long as she remained quiet. Madison tilted her wrist, letting the bracelet catch the chandelier light. Hope flashed once, cruel and bright. "Maybe you should come in before the neighbors see you standing there like this," Madison said, her voice wrapped in false concern. "People talk, Emily. People talk." Emily almost smiled. People had been talking for months. At charity lunches, when Madison sat too close to Grant and Emily pretended not to notice. At board dinners, when Grant introduced Madison before introducing his wife. At the country club, where women stopped speaking the moment Emily entered the powder room. She had heard enough whispers to build a second house out of them. Grant stepped closer and reached for the door, not to welcome her in, but to close the scene. You are wet. You are upset. Your doctor said stress is bad for the baby, did she not? The way he said baby made it sound like a scheduling issue. Emily felt the ultrasound picture softening in her hand, and something cold moved through her chest. Not panic. Clarity. Do not use my daughter to silence me, she said. Grant's face tightened. The mask slipped just enough for her to see the anger behind it, the anger of a man whose private life had refused to stay private. You are embarrassing yourself. Madison gave a little sigh, the theatrical kind. Grant, please. She is emotional. Look at her. That was the word they always returned to. Emotional. As if grief was a malfunction. As if betrayal should be processed quietly, politely. Preferably in a room without witnesses. Emily looked at Madison, really looked at her. Perfect hair. Bare feet on Emily's marble. The bracelet on her wrist. The confidence of someone who had been promised a future by a man still married in the present. Take it off, Emily said. Madison blinked. Excuse me. The bracelet. Grant exhaled sharply. Emily, enough. No, Emily said, and this time her voice carried into the foyer. Take off my baby's bracelet. For one strange moment, Madison looked to Grant for permission, and that single glance told the whole story. Even her cruelty had a sponsor. Grant rubbed his forehead like a tired executive dealing with a difficult employee. Madison, just give it back. Just give it back. Not apologize. Not explain. Not confess. Just remove the stolen object so the scene could be managed. Madison's mouth hardened, but she unclasped the bracelet slowly, dropping it into Grant's palm instead of Emily's. Grant held it out. Emily did not take it. She stared at his hand, the hand that had once rested over her stomach during their first pregnancy announcement photo, the hand that now looked like a delivery mechanism for damage. Put it on the table, she said. Something in Grant changed. His politeness disappeared. You are forgetting yourself. The phrase was so old-fashioned, so absurdly cold, that Emily understood he had probably learned it from men who believed money could correct women. No, she said softly. I think I am remembering myself. The room went still again. Upstairs, a door clicked somewhere. Maybe the wind, maybe a draft, maybe the house itself listening. Madison folded her arms. Grant told me you were difficult, but this is actually sad. Emily looked at her. He told me you were temporary. Madison's face lost color. Grant moved fast, not toward Emily, but toward the control panel beside the door. He tapped the screen and disabled the indoor chime, as if silencing a sound could erase what had happened. But above them, the exterior camera blinked again. The smart security system did not care who owned the house. It recorded motion. It recorded voices. It recorded time. Grant had forgotten that the entire estate had been upgraded 2 years ago after a burglary scare, and the system had been installed by Caldwell Risk Solutions, the private investigation and security firm run by Ethan Caldwell, Emily's older foster brother. Ethan, who had warned her gently about Grant before the wedding. Ethan, who never liked rooms with too many locked doors. Ethan, who still had emergency administrator access because Grant never bothered reading service contracts he considered beneath him. Emily stepped inside at last, not because Grant allowed it, but because the rain had already done its job. It had washed the fear off her face. She placed the ruined ultrasound picture on the console beside the white roses and looked at both of them. I am going upstairs to get my hospital bag, she said. Grant's eyes narrowed. You are not leaving. Emily looked toward the small black lens above the foyer. Then she turned back to him. Careful, Grant, she whispered. Everything in this house is listening. Grant looked at the camera first. That was how Emily knew he was afraid. Not of hurting her. Not of losing her. Not even of what Madison had done. He was afraid of evidence. His eyes flicked upward toward the small black lens above the foyer, then to the control panel, then back to Emily's face as if he were recalculating the cost of every word he had just said. Madison noticed it too. Her confidence thinned around the edges. Grant, she said quietly, is that thing recording? Emily did not answer. She did not need to. The little blue light above the door kept blinking with the calm patience of truth. Grant forced a laugh, but it came out flat. The system overwrites every 24 hours. Emily held his gaze. Then you should hope the next 24 hours are kinder to you than the last 10 minutes. For the first time that night, Madison stepped back. One small step. Barely anything. But Emily saw it. Grant saw it. The house saw it. Emily turned toward the stairs, each movement careful because Dr. Harris's warning still rang in her mind. No stress today. Not one unnecessary argument. The irony almost made her laugh. She had come home early to protect her daughter and walked into a life that had already been betraying them both. Behind her, Grant's voice dropped into a sharper register. Emily, stop. She placed one hand on the banister. The wood was cool beneath her palm. She had chosen that finish herself, a dark walnut polished until it reflected the chandelier above. She remembered standing there with the interior designer while Grant took a call in the driveway and waved away her questions about cost. Whatever you want, he had said then. Back when generosity was still useful to him. Now every beautiful thing in the house felt like a witness with its mouth sewn shut. I said stop, Grant repeated. Emily did not turn around. You do not give me instructions anymore. The sentence was not loud, but it moved through the foyer like a crack through glass. Madison made a small sound behind her, half scoff, half disbelief. You are making this so much worse for yourself. Emily paused on the third stair. No, Madison. I am making it clear. She continued upward, past the wedding portrait that hung on the landing. In the photograph, Grant looked proud, Emily looked radiant, and neither of them looked real anymore. Her white dress in the picture had filled the frame like a promise. Now the woman beneath it felt like someone Emily had been asked to play for too long. The bedroom door was open. Of course it was. Grant had not even cared enough to hide the evidence of Madison's presence. Her scarf lay across the chair Emily used for reading. A cosmetic bag sat near the sink. A pair of heels waited beside the bed as if the room had already changed owners. Emily stood at the threshold and let the humiliation pass through her without swallowing it. That was new. For months, she had swallowed everything. The canceled dinners. The unanswered texts. The way Grant stopped saying goodnight. The way he looked at her stomach as if fatherhood had become a public relations obligation he regretted signing. She walked to the closet and pulled out the hospital bag she had packed 2 weeks early because mothers prepare for storms before anyone else sees clouds. Inside were soft pajamas, insurance cards, a phone charger, newborn clothes, and a tiny white hat with embroidered moons. Her hands shook when she touched it, but not from weakness. From restraint. Downstairs, Grant and Madison were whispering now. Emily could not hear the words, only the rhythm. Damage control has a sound. Quick. Low. Urgent. She took her phone from the dresser and saw Grant's unread message thread still open. Her last text sat there like a confession he had ignored. Coming home early. Doctor wants me to rest. Sent at 2:46 in the afternoon. Read receipt absent. But the phone had also recorded her location, the time she arrived, the call from the doctor, the photo she took of Madison's car in the driveway, without thinking clearly enough to know why. Sometimes survival begins before the survivor understands the plan. Emily opened her contacts and found Ethan Caldwell. Her thumb hovered for one heartbeat, then pressed call. He answered on the second ring. His voice was awake, alert, protective in the way Grant had never been. Emily closed her eyes. She had not called him during the lonely months. She had not called him when Grant missed the anatomy scan. She had not called him when Madison sent that accidental photo from the bar in Manhattan. Pride can look a lot like silence when a woman is trying to keep a marriage alive. Ethan, she whispered, I need you to save the security footage from my house. The line went completely still. Then his voice changed. Not louder, colder. What happened? Emily looked at Madison's scarf on her chair, at her hospital bag, at the wedding portrait reflected faintly in the window behind her. Grant forgot the house was listening. Listen carefully, Ethan said, and Emily heard the faint click of keys on his end of the line. Do not confront him again. Do not warn him. Do not tell him I am pulling anything. Emily stood in the bedroom that no longer felt like hers, looking at the rain sliding down the dark window glass. Her reflection looked pale, but not broken. That surprised her. She had imagined betrayal would make a person collapse all at once, like a house losing its foundation. Instead, it sharpened certain things. The sound of Grant's voice downstairs. The smell of Madison's perfume in her room. The weight of her daughter moving beneath her ribs, still here. still trusting her to choose safety. Can you get it? Emily asked. The footage. Ethan did not hesitate. I am already inside the system. Another pause. More typing. Front door? Foyer. Driveway. Garage. Living room audio from the smart hub. Emily, why is Madison Blake in your house at 3:12 in the afternoon? There it was. Confirmation. A timestamp. A witness outside her own shaking memory. Emily swallowed. Because I came home early. Ethan went quiet for half a second, and that half second carried every warning he had ever swallowed for her sake. He had been 15 when her mother fostered him after his own family fell apart. Emily was 9, all braids and questions, and Ethan had treated her like a sister before the papers ever called it legal. He taught her how to check the back seat of her car, how to read people who smiled too long, how to leave a room without turning her back on danger. Years later, when Grant proposed under a canopy of white orchids, Ethan had stood beside her and said only one thing. Make sure he loves you when no one is watching. Emily had thought he was being protective. Now she understood he had been prophetic. I see her opening the door, Ethan said. His voice had gone flat in that professional way that meant he was angry enough to become useful. I see Grant behind her. I see the bracelet. Emily pressed her fingers to her mouth. Not to cry, to stay silent. Save all of it, she whispered. Already exporting to a secure drive. Cloud backup too. He cannot delete it from the panel. Downstairs, a cabinet door closed harder than necessary. Grant's voice rose, then fell. Madison said something sharp. Emily could not make out the words, but she knew the tone. People who build lies together rarely trust each other when the roof starts leaking. Emily, Ethan said, are you safe right now? She looked toward the bedroom door. I am upstairs. I have my hospital bag. Good. Take your identification, insurance card, medications, and anything irreplaceable for the baby. Then leave through the front door, where the camera can see you. Do not. Let him move the conversation into a room without recording. Emily's eyes moved to the dresser. On top of it was a silver frame from their first anniversary, a photo of Grant kissing her temple at Lake Tahoe. She left it there. Some memories are not worth rescuing from a fire. She took her wallet, the small velvet box where she had placed Hope after Grant returned it to the table, and a folder of medical documents from the nursery desk. Then she stepped into the hallway. The house felt different now, as if every wall had turned its head toward her. She descended the stairs carefully. Grant was waiting at the bottom, fully buttoned now, hair smoothed, face arranged into the calm expression he used before interviews. Madison stood near the console table with her arms folded, but the bracelet was gone from her wrist, and without it she looked less certain of her victory. Emily, Grant said, soft as a closing trap. We need to speak privately. No, she said. One word. Clean. Grant's mouth tightened. You are not thinking clearly. Emily placed one hand on the railing and the other over her daughter. I am thinking clearly for the first time in months. Madison laughed under her breath. This is ridiculous. You walked in, misunderstood something, and now you are trying to punish him. Emily looked at her, then at the doorbell camera above the entry. Then you will have no problem with people seeing what I misunderstood. Grant's face changed. Just a flicker. But in men like him, flickers are earthquakes. Who did you call? He asked. Emily stepped down to the final stair. Someone who reads contracts before signing them. At that exact moment, Grant's phone buzzed on the table, then buzzed again, then again. He looked down, and the color left his face. Ethan Caldwell had sent one message. Footage secured. Grant reached for the phone, but Emily reached the door first. She opened it to the rain, lifted her chin, and walked out of the house with the hospital bag in one hand and Hope in the other. The rain did not stop when Emily reached the driveway. It softened, turning from a hard sheet into a silver mist that clung to her hair, her sleeves, the hospital bag. Pressed against her side. Behind her, the front door remained open. Grant stood in the warm rectangle of light, one hand gripping his phone, the other braced against the doorframe like a man trying to hold up a collapsing wall. Madison hovered behind him, no longer smiling. That was the part Emily would remember later. Not the bracelet, not the perfume, not even the sentence at the door. She would remember the moment Madison stopped looking like a winner and started looking like evidence. Emily walked toward her car, but she did not hurry. Ethan had told her to stay in view of the cameras, and for once in her life, she obeyed the person trying to protect her instead of the person trying to control her. The driveway camera followed her movement. The garage camera caught the silver convertible parked beside Grant's black Range Rover. The front entrance camera captured Grant stepping onto the porch and then stopping, because men like him understand witnesses better than they understand remorse. "Emily," he called, voice low, careful, almost gentle now. She kept walking. "Emily, please. You should not drive upset. Think about the baby." There it was again. The baby as a leash. The baby as a shield for his reputation. The baby as the one word he reached for when every other weapon failed. Emily turned at the driver's door, rain shining on her face. "I am thinking about her," she said. "That is why I am leaving." Grant glanced toward the camera above the garage, then lowered his voice even more. "This does not have to become public." Emily looked at him across the wet driveway. In the reflection of the black marble porch, he looked split in two. One man made of expensive tailoring, the other made of fear. "It became public the moment you brought her into our home," Emily said. Madison stepped forward, clutching the edge of her blouse closed beneath the porch light, her voice thin with panic disguised as outrage. "Grant, tell her she cannot just take things and leave." Emily opened the car door. "I am taking my hospital bag and my daughter's bracelet. Everything else can wait for court." The word court landed between them like a dropped glass. Grant's mouth opened, but no polished sentence came out. For 6 years, he had handled Emily with silence, money, and timing. He missed appointments, then sent flowers. He wounded her in private, then kissed her hand in photographs. He taught her that asking questions made her ungrateful, that sadness made her unstable, that loyalty meant never embarrassing him. But Court was different. Court did not care about his donor list. Court did not admire limestone columns. Court liked paper, dates, footage, transfers, signatures. And Grant had left a trail because he believed no one in the house would ever dare to follow it. Emily slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors. Her hands shook against the steering wheel for the first time. Not outside, where they could watch. Inside, where she could finally admit the truth to herself. She was scared. Of course she was scared. A woman can be brave and still feel her bones turning cold. She placed Hope in the cup holder beside the damp ultrasound picture and started the engine. Her phone rang through the car speakers. "Ethan, I am watching the exterior feed," he said. "You are doing good. Drive to St. Agnes Medical Center. I called ahead. Dr. Harris is meeting you there." Emily pulled down the driveway, past the fountain, past Madison's car, past the gates that opened automatically, like even the estate knew it had no right to keep her. "Ethan," she said, her voice breaking just enough to sound human. "I do not have a plan." "Yes, you do," he said. "First, we make sure you and the baby are safe. Then we make sure he cannot rewrite what happened." Emily looked in the rearview mirror. Grant was still standing on the porch, getting smaller with every foot of distance. For years, she had believed leaving would feel like losing. But as the mansion disappeared behind the trees, she felt something else beneath the grief. Not victory. Not yet. Breath. At the hospital, the automatic doors opened with a soft mechanical sigh. Dr. Harris was already waiting near the intake desk, her white coat over navy scrubs, her expression gentle but serious. "Emily," she said, guiding her into a private room. "Let us check on your little girl." The monitor found the heartbeat within seconds. Fast, strong, alive. The sound filled the room like tiny thunder. Emily closed her eyes, and for the first time that day, she cried without apologizing. Ethan arrived 20 minutes later, rain on his jacket and a sealed laptop bag in his hand. He did not hug her right away. He looked at the monitor first, listened to the heartbeat, and only then let his shoulders drop. "She is okay," Emily whispered. Ethan nodded once. "Good. Because your husband just made his second mistake." Emily wiped her face. "What mistake?" Ethan placed the laptop bag on the chair beside her bed. He tried to delete the footage. Emily stared at Ethan, but the heartbeat monitor kept speaking before she could. Fast, strong, alive. That sound held the room together while everything else cracked. Dr. Harris adjusted the sensor on Emily's belly, gave Ethan one cautious glance, then stepped toward the door. "I will give you both a few minutes," she said. "But Emily, no stress means no stress. Whatever this is, keep your body calm. Your daughter is doing beautifully, and I would like to keep it that way." The door closed softly behind her. Ethan waited until the hallway sounds faded before opening the laptop bag. He did not move like a brother now. He moved like an investigator. Precise. Quiet. Built for rooms where lies had expensive attorneys. At 3:38, he said, lifting the laptop onto the rolling tray beside Emily's bed. Grant accessed the control panel in the foyer using the master code. At 3:39, he attempted to delete the front door clip. At 3:41, he attempted to disable Cloud Sync. At 3:43, he called the security vendor and claimed the system was malfunctioning. Emily felt the hospital blanket tighten under her fingers. Can he erase it? Ethan looked up. His eyes were calm, but there was nothing soft in them. No, one word. A locked door. He can erase his local copy. He can scream at customer support. He can throw the control panel into the Hudson River if he wants. I mirrored the files before he touched anything, and his deletion attempts created a second record. That is the beautiful thing about men who panic. They leave fingerprints on the cleanup. Emily closed her eyes. For months, Grant had told her she was imagining things. Tonight, the house itself had answered back. Ethan turned the laptop so she could see without sitting up. He did not play the whole clip, only a few seconds. Madison opening the door. Grant behind her. The bracelet catching light. Emily's own voice, shaking but clear. Take off my baby's bracelet. Ethan paused it there. This is enough to prove the encounter. But it is not the biggest problem for him. Emily opened her eyes. What is? Ethan clicked another folder. Money. On the screen appeared a list of transfers, property documents, shell company names, and invoices labeled consulting, image development, residential staging. Emily stared at the numbers as if they belonged to a stranger's life. $30,000. $75,000. $180,000 wired to an account connected to Madison Blake's limited liability company. A condo in Tribeca under a corporate name. Jewelry purchases categorized as brand expenses. Emily's mouth went dry. How did you find this? Ethan leaned back, folding his arms. I have had alerts on Grant's public filings since the day you married him. Emily blinked. You what? I was hoping I would never need them. His voice softened for the first time. You loved him, Em. I respected that. But I did not trust him. The words should have hurt. Instead, they landed like a blanket placed over cold shoulders. Someone had been watching the exits even when she refused to admit the room was filling with smoke. Ethan continued. He has a charity gala in 3 days at the Whitmore Foundation. Big donors. Board members. Press. He is supposed to announce Madison as the new communications director. Emily looked toward the rain-streaked hospital window. Of course, not only had Grant brought Madison into Emily's home, he was preparing to place her beside him in public, polished, titled, explained. He was not ending the affair. He was laundering it. No, Emily whispered. Ethan watched her carefully. No what? She turned back to him. Her face was pale, eyes wet, but her voice had changed. It had lost the tremble. No more hiding. The monitor beside her continued its steady rhythm, tiny thunder in a quiet room. Ethan did not smile, but something like pride moved across his face. Then we do this the right way. Medical record first. Attorney second. Evidence packet third. You do not chase him. You let him walk onto his own stage. Emily looked down at Hope resting on the tray beside her. The little bracelet seemed smaller now, no longer stolen, no longer helpless. Just waiting. And Madison? She asked. Ethan closed the laptop with a soft click. Madison opened the door. He looked toward the hallway, where hospital lights hummed like a courthouse before dawn. Now we let the whole room see who was standing behind it. 3 days later, the Whitmore Foundation gala glittered as if nothing rotten had ever grown beneath its marble floors. The ballroom at the Harrington Hotel in Manhattan was washed in soft gold light, every table dressed in white linen, every champagne flute catching reflections from crystal chandeliers that hung above the guests like frozen rain. Reporters waited near the step and repeat wall. Board members shook hands beneath the foundation logo. Donors smiled the careful smiles of people who measured generosity in tax benefits and publicity angles. At the center of it all stood Grant Whitmore, polished, composed, expensive. He wore a black tuxedo, a silver watch, and the face of a man who believed control could be tailored. Beside him stood Madison Blake in a cream evening gown, introduced to guests as the Foundation's bold new communications visionary, though the announcement had not officially happened yet. She laughed at the right moments. She touched Grant's arm lightly when cameras turned. She behaved like a woman already rehearsing the role of the next Mrs. Whitmore, without understanding that the old Mrs. Whitmore was not missing. She was timing her entrance. Emily arrived at 8:12. Not early, not late. Exactly when Ethan told her the press cameras would be pointed toward the main doors. She stepped from a Blacktown car wearing a simple white maternity dress beneath a soft wool coat. Her hair swept back, her face calm in a way that made the photographers lower their voices. She wore no diamonds, no borrowed smile, no performance. Around her wrist was the little gold bracelet, Hope, wrapped twice with a thin white ribbon because it was too small for her, but too important to leave behind. Ethan walked beside her in a dark suit, carrying a leather folder and the quiet authority of a man who had already read the ending. Dr. Harris had cleared Emily that morning with one instruction: do not let them pull you into chaos. So Emily did not bring chaos. She brought documents. At the ballroom entrance, a young staffer checked the guest list and froze. Mrs. Whitmore, she whispered, as if saying the name might change the temperature of the room. Emily smiled gently. Yes. Inside, the music softened under the growing murmur. Conversations bent toward her. A few women touched their husbands' sleeves. One reporter lifted a camera. Across the ballroom, Grant saw her, and for one instant his practiced expression failed. The same look from the doorway returned to his face. Not guilt. Calculation. Madison saw Emily next. Her smile tightened so quickly it almost disappeared. Grant excused himself from a donor and crossed the room with long, measured steps, stopping just close enough to look concerned for witnesses and just far enough to avoid being recorded by Emily's phone, which Ethan had already switched on inside her coat pocket. Emily, Grant said softly, this is not the place. Emily looked around at the ballroom, at the foundation banner, at Madison standing beneath a spotlight near the stage. You made it the place. His jaw tightened. You should be resting. I did, she said. Then I hired counsel. That landed. Grant's eyes moved to Ethan. This is a private family matter. Ethan opened the leather folder just enough for Grant to see the first page. Transfer records. Vendor invoices. The timestamp log from the attempted deletion. Not anymore. Madison approached before Grant could answer, her heels clicking against the polished floor like a countdown. Emily, she said with a bright artificial smile. I am sorry you felt the need to come here like this. Felt the need. Like this. Two small phrases dressed as pity and built to humiliate. Emily turned to her slowly. Madison, the last time you opened a door to me, you were wearing my daughter's bracelet. The nearest conversation stopped. Madison's face went still. Grant reached for Emily's elbow, not hard, just enough to guide, to manage, to reclaim the scene. Emily stepped back before his fingers touched her. Ethan moved half a step forward. Nothing dramatic. Just enough. On stage, the event coordinator tapped the microphone and announced that Grant Whitmore would now introduce the foundation's new communications director. Applause rose across the ballroom. Grant looked at the stage, then at Emily, trapped between the speech he had planned and the woman he had underestimated. Emily leaned closer, her voice low enough for him, but clear enough for Ethan's recording. Go ahead, Grant. Let everyone meet her. For a moment, he almost refused. Then pride did what pride always does. It mistook a warning for a challenge. Grant walked to the stage with Madison beside him. The spotlight found them. Emily stood near the center aisle, one hand resting over her daughter, the other holding the bracelet. Grant smiled into the microphone. Tonight, we celebrate integrity, family, and the future. Ethan exhaled once beside Emily. Then he sent the file to the ballroom screen. The ballroom screen changed before Grant finished the word future. For half a second, there was only the Whitmore Foundation logo glowing behind him, large and gold and meaningless. Then the video began. The first image was the front porch of the Westchester estate, timestamped 3:12 in the afternoon, rain streaking across the lens. Emily appeared on the screen, 7 months pregnant, standing with one hand over her belly and the other holding a damp ultrasound picture. The room fell so quiet that the microphone caught Grant's breath. The door opened. Madison appeared. The cream gown she wore on stage suddenly looked like a costume compared to the image behind her, where she stood in Emily's doorway with bare feet, wet hair, and hope shining on her wrist. Then her own voice filled the ballroom. through the speakers. You were not supposed to be home until 5. No one moved. A woman near the front table covered her mouth. One of the reporters lifted his camera slowly, as if afraid the sound of the shutter might break the spell. On stage, Madison's face emptied of color. Grant turned toward the screen, then toward Ethan, then toward Emily. And in that frantic triangle, everyone saw the truth before the documents even appeared. The video continued just long enough. Emily's voice. Take off my baby's bracelet. Grant's voice. It is my house, Emily. Let us not become dramatic. Then the footage froze on the bracelet. Hope. 5 tiny letters magnified 10 feet wide above the foundation logo. The screen went black. Before Grant could speak, the next slide appeared. Wire transfers. A Tribeca condo owned through Madison Blake's limited liability company. Foundation vendor payments routed as Image Consulting. Attempted deletion logs from the home security system at 338, 339, 341. The beautiful thing about records is that they do not care who owns the tuxedo. They only remember what happened. A board member stood up first. Then another. Grant gripped the microphone so tightly his knuckles whitened, but the room had already left him, even before the bodies moved. Trust leaves before people do. Madison whispered something to him, but no microphone caught it this time. She was no longer the woman opening doors. She was the woman looking for one. Ethan stepped onto the stage, not rushed, not theatrical, just clean and final. These materials have been delivered to Mrs. Whitmore's attorney, the Foundation Board, and the appropriate Financial Review Committee. Any public statement should come after legal counsel has reviewed the full record. Grant tried to laugh. It was the smallest sound in the largest room. This is a misunderstanding, he said. But misunderstanding had a timestamp. Misunderstanding had a bracelet. Misunderstanding had tried to delete itself. Emily did not go to the stage. She did not shout. She did not explain what everyone had already seen. She simply walked to the center aisle, placed one hand over her daughter, and looked at the man who had mistaken her silence for permission. You can keep the mansion for tonight, she said softly, and somehow the microphone on Grant's stage picked it up. Tomorrow, we discuss what was purchased with my inheritance. That was the final crack. Not because of the house. Because every person in that ballroom suddenly understood Grant had not only betrayed his pregnant wife. He had been standing on a life she helped pay for while calling it his. 6 weeks later, the Whitmore Foundation suspended Grant pending investigation. Madison resigned before the board could remove her. The Tribeca condo became evidence. The attempted deletions became a separate affidavit. And the mansion, the cold limestone house at the end of the private road, was placed under temporary order until the court could determine what belonged to whom. Emily did not move back in. She did not want rooms that still echoed with his voice. She rented a quiet home 20 minutes from St. Agnes Medical Center, painted the nursery pale blue with gold moons, and hung no wedding portraits on the walls. When her daughter was born, Ethan stood outside the delivery room with coffee gone cold in his hand, crying like a man who had forgotten he knew how. Emily named the baby Grace Hope Whitmore Carter, because some names deserve to survive the people who tried to steal them. Grant saw his daughter later through court-approved visitation, sitting beneath fluorescent lights in a family services office, wearing a suit that no longer made him look powerful. He brought a stuffed rabbit with a satin ribbon. Emily accepted it politely. Grace slept through the whole meeting, one tiny hand curled around the gold bracelet that had once been used to humiliate her mother and had become the proof that saved them both. Some doors do not open to welcome you home. They open to show you exactly what you survived. And sometimes a woman does not need revenge to become free. She only needs the truth, one witness, and the courage to walk out before the house forgets her name. If Emily's story made you angry, sad, or quietly proud, tell me in the comments what you think justice should have looked like for her and baby Grace. Thank you for watching until the end.